Welcome to another edition of the Growth for Good podcast. I'm Drew Hendry and I'm on the track of business, community groups and organisations who are demonstrating growth for good. This time I'm chatting with Amanda MacArthur, the founder of the Highland Weigh in Nairn. Amanda, thanks for joining us on the podcast. Highland Weigh is a very unique business, and particularly the way you've developed it over the years. Tell us about the business and tell us about why you got into that kind of journey.
So the business, I suppose I think of myself as always being somebody that had the heart of an entrepreneur, even though I'd been a nurse for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. But I think I was one of these people that always kind of had business ideas and I was interested in business. Yeah. But I'd never had the courage or I suppose I'd never come across the thing that was going to make me take that leap. But, you know, sometimes just everything comes together. And for me, it was, I suppose like a lot of people, COVID was a real sort of turning point for me. During COVID, we saw a lot of waste in the NHS. So we were sent a lot of PPE that was suboptimal. We couldn't use it. And some masks that weren't safe or gloves that were fused. And we ended up throwing them away. There was nothing we could do with them. So they went to landfill, essentially. So that was happening. And then at the same time, in my own home, I was becoming more frustrated by the amount of plastic I was bringing into my home, particularly with cleaning products. I was bringing in large amounts of plastic containers. And I was struggling sourcing alternatives in the Highlands. So I suppose at that point, the seed was planted, and luckily I've got a really supportive partner, and I suppose he encouraged me that I could make little steps towards it. So to begin with, well, let's do some research. So we went around some zero waste stores and looked at what they were doing, spoke to the owners, and then the next little step, I suppose, was, well, let's just start putting a business plan in place. So it was all safe little steps that meant I didn't have to fully jump off that cliff and leave the career that I'd been doing for decades. I could do it in that sort of safe way. But it does get to a point where you have to make the decision, are you going to do this or not? And you take that leap. When I was doing the planning and the research side of it, the one thing that had really struck me with zero waste stores was that it was very good to have more than one revenue stream. So that's when we started to explore the idea of having a coffee shop, a cafe that ran alongside the zero waste store, and the two things potentially would work well together. And I suppose around about the same time, we started looking at the business model and felt that being a social enterprise fitted really well with the type of business that we wanted to run, so that profits that we made would go back into the business, it would go back into the ethos of the business. So that seemed to fit well for us.
You mentioned having your partner there with you. Was it important for you to have that supportive voice there to help you through the initial stages? Did you find that an essential part of it?
Yeah, hugely. I described him as my cheerleader. So I had this image of him with pom-poms, full, cheerleader. And because he was my cheerleader. And I think surrounding yourself with cheerleaders is really important because there will also be doubters. I remember before we opened, we were starting to put information out on social media. And I always remember somebody had put a comment saying, I'll give it 6 months. And it was a challenge. I was thinking, we're going to last 7 months just to prove this person wrong. And that still occurs when we had our second birthday. That comment still came back to me. But I think it's really important to surround yourself with people that remain positive, because it's tough. It's tough starting a business.
Indeed.
And so having those people around you that believe in you and, will tell you that you've got it, I think is good.
And what would you say is unique about the Highland Weigh?
I think the thing that our customers will tell us that is unique is our vibe, which is really funny because when you think, what's the vibe of a business? It's really difficult to put your finger on. How do you create a vibe or what a vibe is? But we're told time and time again that people come in and they like the vibe. And I think that's,
Is that down to personality? Is that the people you work with, people you employ? Is it down to you and others involved?
I think it's the style of the place. I think it's an interesting space for people to come to, and it's interesting to look at. It's 100% our team members.
That's fascinating to look at. Having visited the store on a number of occasions and been around, it's fascinating to be there. But I've been struck by the overall feeling in the place. That's why I was asking about people.
Yeah. The team members, when we tend to have team members that are interested in the business, so they tend to be people who are interested in the ethos of the business. So our environmental impact. So helping people to reduce their plastic and reduce their food waste. But we also talk to our team members about being kind and being aware of our customers, our visitors, helping where we can, keeping the place as accessible and, being as approachable as possible. So I think there's a lot of things that make up the vibe of the space. And that seems to be, I think that is one of our unique features as a business. It's the feel of the space that we've got.
And lifting out from that into your community, how have the people of Nairn taken to the business?
When we were deciding on our location, we picked Nairn for quite a lot of reasons. It does have still a vibrant high street. You can do a proper...
It's always busy.
Yes, and you can do a proper shop on Nairn High Street. So you can go to the butchers and the greengrocers, and you can do a proper shop on the high street. And there's also a lot of tourists come to Nairn, so it's got a lot of pluses for a high street business. When we took over the shop, it had been an old-fashioned clothes shop for years and years and years, and it needed quite a lot of work, a lot of renovation. And I remember when we first started the renovation, I had planned to block out the windows with the stuff that people put on windows. I don't even know what it is, but I didn't manage to find out.
Kind of whitewashy stuff.
White stuff,
yes.
But
people always write on it.
But I didn't know what they were using, so I never found something to put on the windows. Well, it was probably the best thing for us, because it meant that the community were watching what we were doing. So it
was an unfolding story.
Yes. Yeah. So they were, even the kids going to school were peeking through the windows and watching what was happening. And people were coming in and asking us what's so they were very interested and curious from the beginning, what kind of shop is coming to this space. And I think that meant the day that we opened, there was already through word of mouth and through social media, there was a lot of interest in this new business that was coming to Nairn. And also, I suppose people in the community, they don't want empty shops on their high street. So they are interested, and they want you to do well, apart from the man who wanted us to go after 6 months. But, so they're encouraging you and they want you to succeed.
You might have won him over by now.
Yes, possibly. You might be one of our regulars. So on the day that we opened, we were absolutely stowed out. The community really came out for us. But from that point onwards, the community have really continued to support us. We do have a lot of visitors in the summer, but out with those, we have a lot of winter months in the Highlands, and it's really the community that's supporting us, that keep us going. So
I think anybody walking past can see that, because there's a lot of toing and froing. There's people in there. There's everybody seems happy to use all the space that's in there when they're in there. So it comes across. You talked about that success, but what have been the challenges in setting up a zero waste business? What are the things, the barriers you've come across?
There was a lot of gaps in my knowledge to start off with that were challenges. So as I've said, I was a nurse for years and years, and so I had an awful lot to learn in a very short space of time. I think one advantage was I didn't realise the extent of the gaps in my knowledge. So I went in, with
fearless. In that way.
I was fearless, and I learned that I had to ask for help. If there was something that I didn't know. So there was definitely my own knowledge gaps. In terms of the zero waste side of the business, it's all about problem solving. I think that's probably the greatest skill that you need, is the ability to solve problems, because sometimes you're trying to do things in a way that's counterintuitive, or it's different, So something as simple, if we're trying to cut down the waste in our cafe, if you take, for example, a scone with jam and butter, then we're looking at that thinking, well, what can we do to reduce the amount of packaging that's involved with this? People love a scone with jam and butter.
Of course.
Yeah. And so we make our own jam in the shop. And that means we're not buying jars of jam. And obviously glass has got a lot of, environmental impact. It means we're not buying any of those horrible little plastic individual jam containers. So we make our own jam, we put it into kiln jars, and then we serve individual little pots to the customers. Same with the butter, we just chop up butter, so we're not using individual butter portions. And then on the plate, you'll get a napkin that is reusable. So we wash them, and so there's nothing disposable there. So I think it's the problem solving around, you're trying to do things in a different way. And sometimes it can be more expensive. So you're not necessarily saving money. Washing napkins is maybe more expensive, but so and not everything we do we can find a solution for, or we're still endeavouring to find solutions. So it's the problem solving side of it, I think, that is.
Is that a challenge you give to your customers, to give you suggestions? If there's something that's stuck and you can come up with a better idea, is that something you do?
Definitely. They, I think people like to be involved with the business. The team are the same. Our team members are the same. But, involving them in how we can approach things. And in terms of the zero waste, it's it's very physical. That there's a lot of hoofing sacks around and containers, and so it's quite physical for the staff, and for the customers. We're having to teach them a way of shopping that's not convenient. It's not like everything about shopping over the last, since we were kids, has been about convenience. You should be able to go to the supermarket, get everything you need, not necessarily even speak to a member of staff, go self-serve, and you're out within a short period of time. Well, zero waste shopping is not like that at all. You have to remember your containers, you have to weigh them, you have to get the products in, you have to weigh it again, up to the till. It's so it's a completely different way of shopping. And so a lot of our customers initially need help with that. Which is why I think the vibe of the place is so important, because if you're asking people to shop in a way that's not as convenient, what you want them to feel is, okay, it's not convenient, but actually it's a nice space, and I can have a coffee afterwards.
And there's a reason to do it.
The mission is one thing. Knowing that they're having a positive impact by doing that is one thing, but we all know how busy people are. They've got families. They've got after school clubs, there's all sorts of challenges. And so I think that's why the vibe is so important, because it has to be worthwhile. It has to feel good in order for you to keep doing it that way.
And how do you source your products?
Where possible, we source them as close to the Highland Weigh as possible. And so we buy within the Highlands wherever we can. So things like, we've got kombucha on tap, comes from Findhorn.
For those who might not know, what is kombucha?
Kombucha is a fermented drink that's good for your gut, and it tends to be made from fruits. We tend to have a raspberry and one, and a lemon one.
And that's on tap.
And it's on tap. It's great for your gut, and you can bring a bottle in and fill that. It does look like we've got beer on tap, but no, we don't. It's kombucha. So that's sourced locally. Our milk and eggs we get from a local dairy. Our cake supplier is in Croy, so that's Pure Bakery. They make vegan cakes. So we source within the Highlands where possible, Highlands and Islands. We've got a few products from Skye. If we can't get something in the Highlands, then it's within Scotland. And if it's not within Scotland, then it's within the UK. So we're trying to be as local as we possibly can.
I'd asked you about the community taking to you as a business and what you were doing in the community, but it sounds like you're doing a lot of work to make sure that you're supporting whoever you can that's within a short distance for a couple of different reasons. I presume that's also because you really want to use local businesses as well.
Yes, and having that relationship with local businesses, you get to know their story. And again, because of the way people are shopping with us, that they are interested in where the products have come from, as much as the environmental impact. People do like to know where the food has come from, and so we can talk about the dairy, where and how the cows are treated in the dairy, and we can talk about the eggs, and so knowing our suppliers and having that relationship with them, and they become our champions. They want us to succeed and do well, and we want to be able to do the same for them. And it's that relationship that you have.
Do you feel that's a part of your value set? What would you say your values are in terms of being in business?
I think I've talked about our mission, in terms of the environment. So, and that's at the heart of everything that we do. I think beyond that, I think there's this interest in business in the Highlands, wanting to keep young people in the Highlands, wanting sort of people within the Highlands to have, businesses that they're proud of and that they like to use. And,
there's an element of legacy there, isn't there? You're wanting to create something that you leave your legacy. You're talking about young people, you're talking about that quality. And whenever we've seen success in town centres and village centres, city centres even, it's been down to the fact that there's an element of quality that's in there. That's certainly something that comes across in your business.
It's. I think the one thing when I was talking about having to learn, one of the early lessons I think that I learned was that you actually have to put quality, you have to put your product ahead of your mission, which feels counterintuitive, especially for a social enterprise, because as a social enterprise, you're supposed to be all about your mission. I remember reading about or hearing about a business in America, and they're a coffee shop, but they're a social enterprise, and their mission is to supply clean drinking water globally, so that the profits that they make go towards that mission. But their business is all about the quality of their coffee, because they can't achieve their mission if they don't have great coffee, because people might come once, because of their mission, but they're only going to keep coming for the great coffee. So I think that's something that I did learn early on, is that yes, our mission is one thing, but we have to put the quality of the product and the offering ahead of that, because we have to, in order for people to keep coming back to us, they have to love what we're doing, love the quality of the shop and the food and the coffee that we serve.
You talked about earlier. One of the things you were talking about was you get a lot of tourists, coming in. Obviously, must be times when you're really, really busy. But is that aspect of the Highlands where we get a tourist season? Sometimes it's more extended, and I know there's been a big effort in recent years to make sure it's extended. But is that part of the issue? You're trying to gear up sometimes for really busy times, and then you might have too much on tap, if you like, when it's a bit quieter. Is that one of the issues?
I think in terms of our business, we are fairly consistent. It does certainly get busier during the summer months. Nairn is popular for tourists. I think probably more of a challenge is some of the when I talked about problem solving, some of the problems that we have in relation to, this sort of process that we go through with problem solving can be to do with how the sparseness of the Highlands, how spread out everything is. So, for example, one of the problems that we've been trying to solve is in relation to disposable coffee cups.
Right.
So as a business, we decided from day one we would have no disposable coffee cups. But that meant we had to, in order to still be able to give people coffee to take away, we had to have solutions for them. We came up with a number of solutions. One was that, which fitted with our local population very well, is that we encouraged them to bring their own cups in. Yeah. And so it was just they knew that if they were coming in, they had to have their cup in their hand, and we see them coming in every day with their beloved, well-used cup. So that works well for anybody who's local, who already knows, you know, what the plan is. For somebody that's visiting the Highlands as a, you know, maybe as a tourist that's coming to the Highlands for, say, 2 weeks, we have a coffee scheme, a cup scheme, so they can borrow a cup and they can keep the cup for a fortnight, which works very well for visitors, because it means when they, at the beginning of their visit, they can come to us, they can borrow a cup, and they can use it in all the coffee shops around the Highlands. They don't just have to use it with us. That's their cup for 2 weeks. Before they leave, they can drop it back in, and they will know that during the time they've been in the Highlands, they won't have contributed any disposable cups to landfill. So that works well for them. We also have edible cups, would you believe? So if somebody wants just a quick coffee to take away, they can have an edible cup. So they drink their coffee and they eat their cup. But the person that we struggle to cater for
is a great idea, being able to eat your cup afterwards.
Although sometimes you need another coffee to wash down the cup that you just had. But the person that we struggle catering for is the person that's running for the train. So, you know, we get a lot of people, obviously, that are heading towards Nairn train station. They want a coffee for the train, and we don't have an option for them because they're leaving the area, they're going down to Glasgow or Edinburgh. And in that situation, we don't have anything to give them. So it's in that sort of situation that, you know, because we're more spread out, we've got more of a problem. If you're in Glasgow or Edinburgh, there's more schemes where you can pick up and drop cups in different places. Whereas in the Highlands, there isn't so many coffee shops that are signed up for any of these pilots or any of these projects that you can do that. So the ideal would be, obviously, that we could give them a cup that then they could leave somewhere in Glasgow or Edinburgh. But you would need to be signed up nationally for a scheme like that. So I think in terms of our location, sometimes it can be to do with the sparseness of the location. You know, the fact things are more spread out. There'll be certain problems with delivery and charges for delivery. We've been in the Highlands, same as every business faces.
Otherwise, you know, no kind of insurmountable things going on there. Tell me about any partnerships you have with other businesses or other groups or community representatives.
When we started the business, I think there was, you know, you start developing different partnerships, and one is the high street. People within the high street are very supportive of other businesses. You know, there is the feeling that if, you know, the more businesses that are on the high street that are interesting and that people want to use, that's good for the entire high street, because, you know, you can encourage people in to, you know, to shop at a few different shops. So I think high street shops are very supportive of one another, and they certainly are in Nairn. And then beyond that, because we're a social enterprise, we've also got a network of social enterprises in Nairn. So we've got Green Hive, which are another environmental business. Their mission is really more about encouraging people that maybe wouldn't otherwise be involved with projects, you know, to come along and be involved. But so they do lots of beach cleaning. They do work with recycling plastic. So they're in the towns. We do sort of shared projects with them. We've got a yoga collective, which is just behind us. They're a social enterprise, and they, you know, offer all sorts of
yoga and a coffee.
Yes. So we do quite a lot of collaborative work with them. So they'll have groups in doing yoga in the morning, and then they come down to us and have lunch. We work quite closely with Highlands Islands Climate Hub, and with them we have a monthly climate cafe. So that tends to be people coming along, and we tend to have different speakers covering subjects that our community is interested in. So, for example, this month we're covering Nairn flood risk, and so we've got a speaker that's going to come along and, you know, talk about exactly what the situation is, and, you know, how we can mitigate some of these issues. So, yeah, that's our sort of climate
It sounds
cafe.
like you're very much embedded in the local culture there, as we mentioned earlier on. What excites you for the future for Highland Weigh?
I spoke before about tourists coming to the Highlands, and I think more and more when people come to the Highlands, it's such a beautiful part of the world, and they come for lots of different reasons. They come because of Harry Potter. They come for, the hill walking,
the Outlander stuff, all that kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think that more and more when tourists come to visit, they don't want to have an impact on the area that they're visiting. And I'm very interested in the Highland Weigh becoming more involved with helping visitors to come to the Highlands and reducing the impact that they have.
Yeah.
And I think that we can do that in many different ways. I've talked about the cups. If we can involve the tourist industry in the circular economy, so by that I mean that their cleaning products and their toiletries, if we can deliver those products to them and pick up their empties, it means that they are removing that plastic completely. So, which again, they can then let their visitors know.
Sounds a really interesting concept. Is it at an early stage just now, or are you quite advanced with that?
It's been in the planning stage for a little while. We're at the point now where we're ready to make that offering to the bed and breakfasts, and put in place plans. Obviously, from the point of view of the bed and breakfast and the Airbnbs and so on, it needs to be a reliable supplier that they have, and so we need to make sure that we've got sort of everything in place for them, so that it just happens as easily as possible. So when they make this transition over to this sort of circular way of managing their toiletries and their cleaning products,
they're going to have everything.
It's as easy as possible for them. Yeah.
Very good. And what's since we're talking about products just now, what's the most surprising product that you sell in Highland Weigh, or what's taken other people by surprise the most, do you think?
I mean, I think we knew we would sell a lot of certain products. Porridge. It turns out we really do like porridge. So we sell a lot of porridge oats, and we actually serve the porridge in the cafe as well, so we make it up. One of our top selling products is these little drinks called fighter shots. So the ginger and the turmeric shots. It's probably just something that's quite fashionable at the moment, but having these little drinks, it's like the kombucha. People are paying much more attention.
So you've got draft and shots.
Yes. So one way or another, we're looking after your gut. But
it's like a healthy pub.
Yes. So people do love their shots of ginger. I think really having choices. So even in relation to things like deodorants, having different options, toothpaste tablets. So, and that's it's a different way of brushing your teeth. It takes a bit of getting your head round, but you take one of the toothpaste tablets, you chomp them up and brush your teeth as normally. So people try things, and
people like pouring their own peanut butter and things as well.
Oh, the peanut butter, yes. That's interestingly, I was in Tesco a couple of days ago, and I was going down the pet aisle, and I noticed they've got peanut butter for dogs. Don't know if you've seen it in the.
I haven't, but it sounds fascinating.
Yeah, so they've branded peanut butter for dogs, and so I did think, well, what's different about this to the human peanut butter that's in a few aisles up? So I looked at the ingredients, and it was peanut butter and palm oil. Palm oil being a baddie.
Of course, yeah.
So, but apart from that, just had a dog on the front. And
real issue, in fact, just for people listening who might not know about palm oil, there's a real issue about the environmental impact of harvesting palm oil.
Absolutely.
And where it's being harvested from. So sorry.
Yes.
Just that, carry on.
Absolutely. So, so it did occur to me that the peanut butter that we've got in the shop, we've got a peanut butter machine. The only thing that goes into it is peanuts, and out comes peanut butter into your jar. So none of the nasty palm oil, and no packaging, because you can just bring your little jar in. So the peanut butter has been really popular as well, and people are just. And
there's a new market there for dogs, obviously.
Yes. So, yes, we will be marketing it for dogs as
Highland Weigh dog selection. So there's obviously some really interesting things that are going on there just now. What do you? Can you tell us any stories of people who have come in that really reflect the spirit of Highland Weigh?
When we certainly at the climate cafes have been really interesting, because they we get several generations coming to the climate cafes. And as I've said, very much we're talking about topics that matter to people in the Highlands. And at times they can be really emotional because we'll maybe get the older generation who actually feel quite guilty about, the environmental, impact that's happened during their lifetime, and will feel really quite emotional about it. And then we'll get the younger generation who are actually quite angry and are quite upset. But the nice thing is having that time where different generations can come together and talk about these subjects, and the younger generation can see the emotion, and the older generation.
It's cathartic for everybody to do that, as well as having a purpose. But you feel as though I can benefit the mental health in having that kind of conversation.
Yes, I mean there are studies showing that young people have environmental anxiety. They're scared. They can't sleep at times.
We're recording this, there are wildfires consuming Los Angeles. Now, that's the other side of the world, obviously, but we've had wildfires here in the Highlands that have occurred during extraordinarily dry spells.
Yeah, I mean, the Highland Weigh, when I talked about our vibe, in terms of the business's personality, the business's personality is about fun and about storytelling around our products. So getting messages over, not on a soapbox and not telling people how to live their lives, but trying to do it in a very gentle, sort of friendly, soft way. But at the heart of all of it is, really a very serious mission. And when we see the generations coming together and having these conversations, the hope is that by becoming involved and feeling that they can do something, and even at a local level, when we discuss this month about Nairn flood risk, well, what can we be doing as a community? How can we help each other out? If there is an emergency, how do we get the sandbags down to the houses that need the sandbags? And you become involved in the solutions, and you don't feel so powerless, I suppose. And so hopefully that does help to reduce some of this anxiety that can go along with this.
Having experienced both the vibe, the coffee, some of the food, the peanut butter indeed, and many other things in the Highland Weigh, I can say that it is an experience that people certainly enjoy if they've not been there before. I know you've got a really loyal customer base there as well, as you said, from the community. From my point of view, I'm just encourage anybody to go in and have a look and see what they can do, and take a container or two just in case.
Absolutely, you never know what you might need. So,
Amanda, can I thank you very much indeed for joining me on this Growth for Good podcast. It's been a delight to talk to you today, and I'm sure that we'll be talking more about Highland Weigh in future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for listening to this Growth for Good podcast. You can hear more episodes at drewhendry.scot.